Good afternoon. How do I express the feeling that I have? I'm near crying to see such a wonderful, wonderful amount of people that are caring for what happened to us. What you are doing is absolutely undescribable. Patty, you and the whole staff, there are no words, because when we survivors were talking, we said, after we are gone, what is going to happen? It's going to be forgotten. The books are going to be read, the movies are going to be forgotten, but the museums will be here, and that is for the young people. But what I am so happy to see is the young people, the second generation, the third, and even some of you coming fourth generation, so that they will not be forgotten. The 6 million will not be forgotten. A great honor goes to the education, who they stand up, they seek, they contact the schools, and then they match a speaker to come to speak to them. And I am fortunate enough to see one of them here stand up, Millie, and but then there are those that, like Susan's, that they are part of the PTAs. They invite interesting speakers about the Holocaust, and they see to it, even though if their sons and daughters are now in college, but they stay in the middle schools and the high schools to continue to do what is so important. Because it is so very, very important to keep it living. Unfortunately, what's happening now, the anti-Semitism and indifference is blossoming again. I say to myself, Judy, you didn't do enough. What didn't we do? Why didn't we educate in this whole long time? A little bit about my story. I come from Czechoslovakia. It was a wonderful democratic country, such as the United States. We had no discrimination whatsoever. Free schooling, free enterprise, nobody asked you your religion. Unfortunately, that ended. In 1939, Hitler said that the first country he invaded was Austria. They were sort of welcomed by the Austrians. It was a German-speaking country. Then he said he only wants part of Czechoslovakia, only the Sudeten, and that was a German-speaking part. After he got that, he said he will not go any further, but he did not keep his promise. In March 1939, he just walked into Prague, he himself, and settled himself in the castles. After the occupation of all the countries, every Jew had to wear the Star of David in yellow, different colored yellow. Two of them, one on the sleeve and one on the back, and some of them even had in addition a white armband around their arm. Our life has changed drastically. Every man from the age of 18 to 40 was drafted to slave labor camp. Any educator, doctor, lawyer, dentist, they lost their job immediately. We Jewish children could no longer go to school. I met my friend Olga. She said, Judy, why weren't you in school? Because I'm Jewish. But you were Jewish yesterday. She could not understand what happened all of a sudden. My father had a general store. They put in a commissar, and the proceeds from the business was going to the government. Everything else was confiscated. We had a big farm, horses, cows. They took everything away. The big house where we lived, the officers were living there. But we were still home. Unlike in all countries, wherever they occupied, the Jewish people had to go in a ghetto. From the ghetto, they were taken to slave labor camps, and from 1939 until 1943. They were staying in ghettos and in concentration camps. We were fortunate in the area where it's called the Carpathian, Podkarpatska Rus. We were still able to stay together in our home. But that too ended. It was, first let me I come from a family of 6 children. My older sister lived in the same town. She had 2 children. She had a 16-year-old boy and a 14-year-old girl. I was 14 when we were occupied. Our life has changed drastically. My next sister in line was married, and she was married to a guy from Poland, about 1 hour by train from our town. She had a 3-year-old little girl and a 7-year-old boy. What happened in Poland and in Belarus and all the other countries, all the Jews were taken into camps or into ghettos. But what happened, and many of you might have met Father Patrick Demoy. Many of you met him, a very, very interesting person. He describes it very well. What happened in these areas, they gathered all the Jews and kept them either in ghettos or in concentration camps. As I said, my sister had the 2 little children. As long as we were home, my mother was able to save up some butter, some cheese, some bread, some of our food, and we hired a peasant to go over to bring the food to Charlotte. One day, he came back and he said, "I regret very much. I could not deliver the food to Charlotte, but I witnessed her execution." This is what he is talking about. This was the Holocaust by bullet. What they did, they gathered the people by the thousands, by the entire village. They made them go out of town. They made them dig their own grave. And the brutality, they shot the children first, the fathers later, and at the end the mothers. And then the peasant came back and told us that he could not deliver the food to Charlotte, but he witnessed her execution. This is what they did, and he describes it so very well. 2.2 million Jews were killed by a gun, and this was the most brutal way that you can imagine. They made them even get undressed to utilize their last piece of clothing. My next brother in line was married, and he lived in Belgium. He had 2 sons. When they were occupied by the Germans, he was fortunate enough to get himself to England, and he joined the Czechoslovak army. My sister-in-law was fortunate to go to the south of France and was hidden with her 2 sons. There were many Gentile families that saved Jewish people. And in Israel, Yad Vashem is rewarding and honoring and thanking those people that saved the Jewish people. My only brother in line was fortunate. He came to the United States, and my family is here, the children, the grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. My next brother in line was a dentist, and he He was drafted to the slave labor camp. He was 3 years in a German camp and subsequently caught by the Russian and sent to Siberia, from one hell to the other. I was the only one, the youngest one at home. It might have been a possibility for me to go with the kinder transport. And my father said, Judy, go, you'll save your life. But I chose, I wasn't even taken, there was no definite chance, but I wouldn't have gone. I stayed with my parents and I do not regret it. As I said, we were still fortunate to be home, but that too ended. In April 1944, it was 6:30 in the morning. There were 2 Hungarian gendarmes and 2 SS men knocked on our window. You have a half hour. Take all your money, take all your jewels, enough food for a day. Jewish people had no bread at Passover. We took a little satchel and we walked. We came into town, it was 6 kilometers, 4 miles, and we were told to go to the cemetery. I recall my father saying, how convenient, they're going to shoot us there, they don't even have to bury us. That did not happen. One person could go home and bring more of your money, more your jewels. It's going to save your life. My parents didn't want to go, so I went home. Everything of value was gone already. But we were prepared. We knew that they're going to take us away. So we had it dug in the ground, my mother's jewels and money. My mother was buying gold coins because for gold you might save your life. I asked the woman that worked for us, make a dough, put the gold, the jewels in and bring it to us. She did not do it. Hopefully she was able to keep it for herself. We were there 1 week. After a week we were taken to Hungary, to a town called Mátészalka. There we were 6 weeks in a ghetto. About 30 families in a little house, but there was a shelter, there was some food, but we were still together with our parents. After 6 weeks, we were told to go to the railroad. This time, we were put into cattle cars. 65 to 75 people in one of the cattle cars, like sardines. They gave us an empty bowl as for the bathroom and one filled with water. They closed it with an iron bar. We waited till the following morning. This was the most horrible 4.5 days. There was no air. There was one little window in dark, pitch dark. And the first night a man dies. What do we do with the body? Put him in a corner. Women were giving birth. It was the most pathetic. But what was the worst? There were people that went crazy. They started hitting the others and screaming. The SS man said, if that doesn't stop, we will take all of you out and shoot you on the spot. We had to tie their mouths, tie their hands, and keep them quiet. Men were dying, children were being born. The air was unbelievable, suffocating. Finally, it was the 21st of May. It was my father's birthday. The doors open, and there are men in the striped uniform running back and forth. Rouse, out. They tell us, line up row of 5, women separate and men separate. There's my mother, my sister, my aunt, my niece, myself, and my aunt's 3 little children, 2, 4, and 6. There's my father, my brother-in-law, my uncle, my nephew, and another man. And the men in the striped uniform are running back and forth, looking at us. 14, at young people, 14, 14, 18, in every language. What does he mean by 14? If he sees a woman with a baby in her arm, give the baby to your mother. Give the little girl away. What does he mean? He looks at a man. You are a tailor. You are a shoemaker. You are a doctor. You are a musician. He tells a woman, take your kerchief off, smile, stand straight. Again, 14. What does he mean? We did not understand. The SS men are running with a German shepherd on the leash. They are not giving the orders. The orders are given by the men in the striped uniform. And we wait online and wait. There is a big sign, Arbeit macht frei. Work will liberate you. We are bewildered. Out comes this tall man with the shiny boots, with a rubber stick in his hand. This is Dr. Josef Mengele. He was called the angel of death. He was to determine who shall live and who shall die. He came to our row. He pointed to my knees to go to the left, to me to go to the left. And as I passed my father's row, he put his hands on my head, as he did every Friday night. And he said, Judy, you will live. These were the last words that I heard from my father. This was the last day that I saw my parents and 24 members of my family. We went to the left, and they went to their death. We came to an enormous building. There, we were told to get undressed, completely naked. The youngest woman that he picked might have been 31, 32. He didn't pick us to live. He picked us because he needed people to work, to send to Germany, to send to Poland. He said, if the war ends at 12 o'clock, at 11:55 he will have time to kill the rest of us. If we had any jewel, we had to put it in a little dish. We sat down, and then behind the chair was a man in the striped uniform, cut our hair, completely bald. We were given a little piece of soap, and we stood in front of a door where it says bath. In our place, it was water. In our parents' case, it was gas. After the shower, we were given a straight gray dress, no underwear, and a pair of wooden clogs. And we lined up. The entire camp, we are in Auschwitz, and we are walking to Birkenau. The entire camp is surrounded with barbed wire. If you touch it, you get electrocuted. And we started marching. It's 1 hour walk. We walk in a row of 5. After every 5th row, there is an SS man and an SS woman with a gun. There is a tower, an SS man with a machine gun pointing at you. There is no way of escaping. After an hour walk to Birkenau, we were put into an enormous block. They called them by the number, Block 14. We were Block 14. 1,400 young women in the barrack. We were just settled into those barracks. It's like a bookcase. Only the face sticks out. Only the ones on top had air. Within minutes, there is the most horrific smell of burning hair. And we asked the girls that were there before, what is that horrible smell? And they said, these are your parents burning. As we went through the shower, they went through the gas chamber and immediately to the crematoriums. What happened? Until 1942, they were killing the Jews by the thousand, 2 million to 200 in all these years. And they decided this is much too slow and much too costly. We cannot do it. So they sat down in a suburb of Berlin called Wannsee, and they were sitting, we were there, Agnes and I, we were there in 2014, a beautiful, beautiful village in a gorgeous house. They sat down with a gourmet lunch, and they decided that this is much too slow and much too expensive. So they have to find a way where they can kill more people and at a cheaper way. That's when they started with the exterminating camps, such as Auschwitz, Treblinka, Majdanek. But how did they do it? They did it so fast. If you read the book, The Tattooist, you see how they did it. Within 2 months, they built all these crematoriums. They did it with the slave laborers of the Jewish men, but they hired even people and paid them overtime in order to get those exterminating camps finished. This is the way it was, a factory of people. When we were in Auschwitz 6 weeks, there were transports 3 to 4 a day. Mengele didn't do any more selection because he just wanted to kill them in a fast way. Getting back to the camp, we were woken up every morning at 5:30 in the morning, and we are going to be counted, roll call. Where could I go? There is no way of escaping. And you are being counted again and again until you hear that word Shimoye. So what did she do? There is one missing. So you drag the body out, but that she died. Or they went crazy, so they had to account for it. We stand on line twice a day, in the morning and night. After roll call, you go to a bathroom. Indeed, it is a terrible thing. You are given a very short time, and if you cannot, you have to wait till the following morning. You get a little bit of water in the morning. You have nothing. You don't have a spoon. You don't have a dish. In the evening, you get 1 pot of soup, which is made out of turnip and thickened with some bran. You take a sip, you give it to the next girl until everybody has one. If there is any left, you start again. You get 1 piece of bread, 4 inches square, very thin, nothing all day in between. Sometimes you're being taken to go to work, to the railroad, to assort the stuff. If you find a morsel of food in the SS woman doesn't see it, you can swallow it. The hunger is great. The hygiene is great. You go to the shower once a week. But with big trepidation, are you going where the water comes down? Because very often, if he had no place to send them, they don't come back to the barracks. After many weeks in Auschwitz, we were taken to the shower, and when we came out, we were given a blanket. What a treasure. We were taken to West Germany, to the town of Gelsenkirchen. There, we were 2,000 Czech girls. Out of the 2,000, 1,000 was working outside, building roads, building bunkers, loading ships, unloading, very hard work, very hard labor. The other ones were working in an ammunition factory. I worked outside. Very hard work. And not only did we have the SS watching over us, but the Organ Tod, which was the army as well. Very hard work, but we were out of Auschwitz, the fear that you're going to be put into the gas chambers. Many of the girls, if you could not work, if you were sick 2 days, you were taken away. Of course, Mengele was coming every other day. If he saw a mother and daughter, he will take one out and the other never to be seen. two sisters. So my niece and I, we never stood next to one another because we were afraid we'll be separated. The hunger was so great. And when we walked to work, the German was saying, "Die sind Leute von einer Hirnanstalt. These are people from an insane asylum." How we wanted to tell them, no, we are victims of your regime, but you do not talk. If you talk to someone, you get killed. You could not talk to anyone. We were there many, many months. And what happened? The bombs were coming, the Allies were coming closer. And there were days we said, "Dear God, we don't mind get killed by the bomb, but let them lose, the Germans." We were there many, many. And in 2014, I was invited to come back to Essen and to Gelsenkirchen. And when we were there, Agnes Werthies was there. She is a filmmaker, and she saw, of course, the town looks so different as it was then. And the factories moved even to other places. Anyway, later on, if there is time, I will tell you the stories, what they said about how they welcomed me and all that. Anyway, and so from there, after many months, we were told to go to the following city, to Essen. There, those that worked outside were working in the factories, and the others outside. Here I worked, this time I worked in the factory. I put in heavy pieces of iron in the oven. When it got red, I handed it over to the next. What happened, a piece of iron fell on my left wrist and it broke. If you cannot work, you're being taken away. I said goodbye to my niece and to all my friends. In the middle of the night, somebody taps me on the shoulder. It's SS woman Erika. She says, "Komm, du Kleine." She called the little one. She took me to the hospital and they put on a cast. I said, "What do I need a cast? I'm going back to Auschwitz." She said, "Don't ask questions." On the way back, she stopped at Krupp, and she asked the foreman to give her a letter. "I need this girl. She speaks many languages. If the Hungarian or the Russian or the Polish or the Czech girl doesn't know German, she wouldn't know how to do the work." He gave her the letter, and I was saved. I went to work, which was no problem. Our hygiene was nil. We got a little bottle of water. There, they deducted a little water for the coffee in the morning and nothing all day long. So we had to save up the water and to wash that one dirty dress when it got dirty. Anyway, but we were full, the lice from head to toe. Anyway, we were working very, very hard. We were diminishing by the week. The girls could not work any longer. Anyway, of course, what Mengele did with the twins, I'm sure that many of you have seen. He did all kind of experiments on twins. He tried to change the color of their eyes. He did all kind of operations without any anesthesia. Unbelievable brutal, because the hospital was just across from Block 14 where we were. And when we saw the twins, we asked them, "How is it here?" They had a bed, and they had a blanket, and they had a pillow, but the experiment that was done was inhumane. So they said, "Well, sometimes he gives us even a little bite of chocolate, and we call him Uncle Mengele." Anyway, after many, many months in Essen, we were told to go on the death march. But that was literally the death march, because we were so emaciated already, just skin and bone, in Hungary. We had to walk from Essen most of the time to Bergen Belsen. It took almost 3 weeks. Sometimes we got a few hours by bus or train, but most of the time just walking. But what was the worst? If there was a mother and daughter, and one of them had to just lie down and die, she could no longer do it. We had to drag the one that could still be saved, and she did not want to leave the loved one. That was the most heartbreaking thing. Finally, we arrived in Bergen Belsen. Anybody that survived Bergen Belsen will live forever. There are mountains and mountains of dead bodies. Wherever you walked, hygiene, none. It was unbelievable. The food was so sparingly. Like today, she would serve the food in this corner. So you stand in line and hope that by the time you get there, there will be anything left. But the next day, you wait in line in the same corner, but she decides to do it on the other corner. By the time, the hunger was unbelievable. You become like an animal. You do not think of anything else. At one time, the person that was distributing the soup happened to be from my hometown, a little bit of more of a joyous thing. You might laugh about it. And she was distributing. Her name was Anush. I came nearby, and Ida, my niece, is next to me, and I said, Anush, could you go a little deeper, maybe a little thicker soup? I will not. I said, Anush, why wouldn't you? Because your brother Emmanuel was going out with me and he dumped me. So there is your Uncle Emmanuel who did that. So when he was liberated, it took me a whole year to find him. And of course, I told him, I don't know whether he remembered that. Anyway, so we were still in Bergen Belsen. The hunger was unbelievable. And the hygiene, none whatsoever. There were days where the SS were gone. So what did we do? We ran to the place where the Germans kept their food, hoping that we'll be able to get some. We didn't know that there were civilians and they were shooting at us. 2 of my distant cousins were killed as well. My niece is completely jaundiced already. She said, Judy, I cannot take it. If I have only one more bite of food. So the SS women announced, if there are any women that would carry the bodies to the mass grave, is going to get a bowl of soup. I found a girl from my hometown, and we carried. The bodies can be so heavy. The stomach is bloated, the arms are breaking, the legs are breaking. At the end, we got a bowl of soup, and Ida disappeared. I said, oh my God, she did not want me to see her dead. There were days where we did not see any SS man. We were so happy because we heard the shooting going closer. But then they come back and they stay another week. The hunger is unbelievable. When I speak in schools, I cannot say it, but men engaged in cannibalism. It is unbelievable unless you saw it. It was the most heartbreaking thing, the hunger that was going on. Finally, one beautiful morning in the spring, we saw soldiers in a different uniform. And they said they were British. You are free. I spoke English. I said, are you sure you're not German disguised? They said, no. You are free. They gave us all the food they had. It was the wrong thing because our stomach was all shrunk and many people were dying by the thousands after that. But we are free. That was a wonderful thing. We were all very sick. There was typhoid, there was TB. We were very, very sick. After they burned down that part of Bergen Belsen, they converted churches, schools to hospitals, have the doctors that were killing us before treating us. There was no antibiotics at that point. They did their best. It took 1 whole year to cure me. I had pleurisy with water in my lungs. It took 1 whole year. But we are free. So they gave us a choice. You can stay in Germany in a displaced person camp, or you can go back to your country of origin, or there was a Swedish Count Folke Bernadotte, and he invited many thousands to go to Sweden. When I woke up after the high fever, my niece was alive in the same room. What a wonderful surprise. She chose to go back home, hoping that she'll meet her brother, find her brother, who was killed 2 days before. I chose to go to Sweden. We came to Sweden, suddenly we saw human beings. People are smiling at us. People think we are human again. I chose to go, after I was in and out of the hospital, I went back to school, I learned my profession, and I stayed there. I had to stay 3 years because my quota was high, and I couldn't, until 3 years I was able to come into the United States. Of course, I had a brother here. I still had a grandmother, uncles, and aunts, and nobody loves this country as much as we survivors do, because what this country offers freedom. And what I am so happy about, that what you are all doing is not to forget this horrible thing and all these people, because the ones from the camps, there were people to tell the tale, but the ones from these people, they were killed. I tried to get somebody from the town of Mikulicin, where my sister lived. There is nobody there alive, except I talked to this Father Du Bois, and he said that this year he's going to cover the territory where my sister lived, in Yamna, Yaremcha, Delatin, and Mikulicin, and he is going to see where those mass graves are. In 2010, I accompanied a group of students, 80 students, on the March of the Living. That was the most unbelievable. If any of your children or grandchildren want to go, encourage it. It is so important. When we came to Treblinka, and there is one camp where the ashes are still under a tent. We had to drag the children away. You could not take them. It's an experience that they have to experience. Do encourage it. Again, I want to thank you all so very much. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. But mostly the very young, but I see so many young people that are doing the best they can. Some of them are grandchildren, and do that. Join all you can and do all the help, because the museums will be here, and we thank you so much. Now we can rest with our mind that we are not going to be forgotten.